Hello and welcome to another Spectrum Geeks video. As usual, we're doing the monthly kind of UK solar stats for my solar system here in the UK. I'm very late with this video, so apologies for that. A few things going on at home, trying to sell my car, and work's been quite busy. So just about getting this in before talking about September stats. So let's roll the intro, remind you what my system looks like, and then we'll jump onto the computer and talk about stats. Okay, so my setup, I'm based in the West Midlands in the UK. I have a 9 kilowatt solar array. They are Pymar solar panels. So they've all got Solar Edge optimizers on the back, connected into a 6 kilowatt Solar Edge inverter. Connected to that, I also have a Tesla Powerwall 2 with a Gateway 1, so no backup gateway, no ability to isolate myself from the grid and run just from battery power. And I also have My Energy Eddy to heat the hot water from surplus solar, and a My Energy Zappy to be able to charge our electric cars. Right now we have a Tesla Model S and a 40 kilowatt Nissan Leaf, so we're charging those from the system as well. And finally, in addition to that, I use I can't get my words out, Octopus Energy for my electricity and gas providers. So I'm on their Go tariff, so during the day it's 15 pence per kilowatt, but in between 12:30 in the morning and 4:30 I have an off-peak tariff which enables me to get electricity for 5 pence per kilowatt. So that's when I would kind of hopefully top up the power a little bit, charge some cars and heat some water if the solar's not doing it. If you're interested in Octopus Energy, I think they're a really good company, great customer service and whatnot. If you decide to join up, there's a link in the description below. You'll get a £50 credit to your bill, as will I. So we're going to jump over to the computer to look at kind of how the system's performed. It's not been a great month, I don't think. The weather's been a bit kind of changeable, so it'd be interesting to see how things have kind of worked out. I've also still got this ongoing issue with some water leakage coming through on the roof still, despite the solar people and the roofing company coming out to try and make some things. And as I record this in kind of nearly the end of September, I currently have my panels off my roof whilst they try and look at doing something. So I don't know how long I'll be without solar, which is a little bit sad. But we'll jump over to the computer and go through the overview for the month and go through the day by day. Okay, so here we are. We're looking at for the month of August 2020. So just starting off with the system production. So 889.33 kilowatt hours of energy produced in August. Was able to self-consume 90% of it and export 10%. So that worked out to be 796.27 kilowatt hours self-consumed, and exporting quite a large amount, actually 93.05 kilowatt hours. In terms of consumption, a little bit up, so 992.49 kilowatt hours. Obviously, as mentioned already, 796.27 of those were self-generated, but we imported 196.21 kilowatt hours. So with the export, we've basically imported about 100 kilowatt hours, and hopefully most of those were during the off-peak, so hopefully it won't have cost us that much. We have a little look through the whole month. We can see there's some definitely higher red days where the consumption, the import is up, especially again towards the end of the month, but no kind of super high days really. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see how things kind of pan out as we go through there. And if we look at some of the comparisons down here, so we look in August. August is the anniversary of my solar installation, and I am going to do a kind of 2 years with solar update. Just need to kind of try and work out my numbers a little bit better, because I did log in at the kind of 2-year anniversary date, take some snapshots of the stats, but I kind of screwed up and missed one of the numbers, so I need to kind of try and work out some of those before I can do the video. But when I do that video, hopefully it'll be interesting to people. I'm going to be looking at what the payback for me is continuing to look like, but also, seeing as fit's no longer a thing, help give people that haven't got solar yet an idea of what their payback might be like without fit, just to give some consideration for that. But if we have a little look, so if we discount 2018, we can see that 2020 was not as good as 2019, so a little bit sad. And we can see that really, apart from March, April and May was better, actually a little bit of June, but July and August not so good, and September's not doing that great either. So let's go into the day by day and flick through, see what we can see. So here we are. So on the first, not too much of a bad day, 27.41 kilowatt hours. A little bit of importing, we've got a bit of export going on there, so a pretty good day on the first day of the month. Second, also pretty good generation, 43.16 kilowatt hours. Lots of export opportunities there as well, but again, we're still seeing, because it's not a nice kind of bell curve, lots of cloud coverage, which obviously impacts our ability to kind of generate some awesome power during the day. Obviously, coming into August, the sun is rising later and setting earlier, and obviously not getting as high, so that does impact performance overall as well. On the third, still doing good, 42 kilowatt hours for the day. And you'll notice, if you've not looked at these videos before, I'm not really pulling from the grid at all. So what's happening is the solar and the surplus into my Powerwall 2 is keeping me going. I'm not having to pull from the grid yet. Okay-ish day, 26.16 kilowatt hours. So met all our needs. It'd be interesting to see on the next day if we had to pull from the grid. I feel like we might have had to, because that's not a lot of surplus. If you're new to the videos, I have lots of servers and stuff running at home, so I am quite a high energy user. Here we go. Actually, not too bad. So we made it through onto the 5th there. Again, still no real pulling from the grid. Bit changeable throughout the day in terms of cloud, but 29.86 kilowatt hours. That's pretty decent. Onto the 6th, another good day. Still not really pulling from the grid. A little bit lower today though, just nearly 21 kilowatt hours. And I think, again, because there's hardly any export going on here, we've really got hardly any surplus, so I think we're probably going to be pulling from the grid the next day. Let's see. Okay, no, we're still good. A little bit of grid pullage there. You can see that's probably the Powerwall doing a marginal bit of cycling, I would imagine, and then deciding, no, we're all good. But then a good start to the day, so a nice start to the curve, all the way up to, what's that, 10:15-ish. Then things start to get a little bit kind of, I guess, overcast, but we've got good clipping happening there, so we're kind of pretty much maxing out at 6 kilowatts for a little while there. And again, good generation for the whole day, 42.71 kilowatt hours. So again, that's going to keep us all good. Shouldn't need to be pulling from the grid. But we are pulling from the grid. So can't remember what's happening, but definitely we've got car charging happening here, and probably a little bit of hot water as well, which is why we've got such a massive pull from the grid. Probably going somewhere. I had to take my wife to hospital a couple of days in that month, so probably had to charge the car overnight. But again, a much better solar generation day. You can see here a really nice curve, apart from that little bit of overcast bit for a little bit there. That's the kind of curve that we like to see. Lots of generation, just under 50 kilowatt hours for the day, and a massive amount of export. So that should be all good, assuming we don't need to charge an extra pulling overnight. There we go again. So not that great, but obviously the surplus that we have in the battery keeps us going. We don't need to pull from the grid. And we got 21.55 kilowatt hours for the day, but very overcast. A little bit of a spike there in the middle of the day, but not greatest generation, but hopefully we're okay through into the next day. Yeah, and we're good. So again, we've got here 31.44 kilowatt hours. So again, no problems. Not much surplus, but doing everything that we need to. Next day, again, pretty good. A reasonable curve in the afternoon, a little bit overcast in the morning, but solid, nearly 40 kilowatt hours for the day there, and a little bit of exporting as well. So happy days. Okay, 12th, another good day actually. I was thinking this month wasn't as good as this, but quite a nice curve, a little bit of overcastness, so we're not fully clipping in the day, but it is a pretty nice curve, and just under 45 kilowatt hours for the day, so another good day. So no real pulling from the grid yet, apart from obviously when charging the cars that one day. Not great production here though on the 13th, so we can see 15 kilowatt hours basically. So, and we can see here that's when a little bit of cooking or something must be happening there, which is kind of having a little spike that we're pulling from the grid. So I'm going to imagine we're going to have some grid pull in the early hours of the morning during the off-peak time. There we have it. So now we're starting to hit some of the bad days. So we're going to 4 kilowatt here. That's the start of some Powerwall cycling. So the Powerwall would have had a little bit of power go into it. Then in the morning, people getting up, hair dryers are on and stuff. Probably not much left in the Powerwall really, and there's not much generation. So we're having to pull from the grid to kind of manage and compensate for some of our power needs. So not that great. In terms of production, obviously then into the evening here, Powerwall has run out, so we're pulling from the grid again. So that's enough, go through all the way into the early hours of the morning, and probably pull a bit more into the Powerwall as well, because obviously only 12.55 kilowatt hours for that day. Okay, if we look at the 15th, a little bit of Powerwall pull. Still, the Powerwall's decided it doesn't need to fully charge because it's a bit stupid sometimes. So it's done a little bit of cycling, but again, first thing in the morning, hair dryers and whatnot, we're struggling, and another poor performance day, so 12.53 kilowatts. But we're not doing too bad in the evening. There's enough in the Powerwall to kind of sort out cooking and whatnot, so we are okay up until the early hours of the morning again, I guess. Again, a little bit of Powerwall action going on, a little bit of spikes up to here, so that may be some hot water heating very briefly as well, but then it's dropping off quite sharply there at 145, which is a bit odd. But the actual day's generation isn't that bad, so just under 23 kilowatt hours. So again, should keep us going pretty well into the next day. On to the 17th. Bit of a weird curve there, so that's definitely a bit of Powerwall going on in the early hours of the morning. I'm not quite sure what's dropped down here, and then this sudden little spike. I don't know if that's the Powerwall just having a last minute kind of, oh, maybe I do need a little bit more, and then stopping quite early though, before, because it doesn't cut off until 4:30. So there's a weird drop off spike there. Not quite sure why that's caused, but again, reasonable generation for the rest of the day, 22 kilowatt hours, so it will keep us fine into the morning. So see what we get on the 18th. Bit more Powerwall, minimal grid pulling happening here. So what happens when you're on the off peak? The Powerwall won't power the house. It knows that the energy is cheap, so that is what basically my house is running on, somewhere between 500 to 700 watts. That's what my house uses overnight with the servers and stuff still on, and then it will kind of charge itself up a little bit, and then obviously this is when it drops off because it then goes to battery power, which is why we see hardly any grid pull. But not a bad day, just under 33 kilowatt hours, again, so we should be okay into the morning. And again, it lets it power itself from the Powerwall, but again, really poor day, just under 9 kilowatt hours. So again, come the evening, ovens must be on, maybe the toaster or something, so we're having to pull from the grid, and that will again carry on till the early hours of the morning. Then on the 20th, again, a little bit of Powerwall charging cycling going on there. The rest of this is just the house power coming from the grid, then it cuts back to the Powerwall, then a nice early start curve, bit overcast, but good generation, 47.7 kilowatt hours. And again, we should be good through to the next day. 21st, not great, but solid enough performance, just under 29 kilowatt hours. So we should be good through into the next day. Again, little spike there, but the Powerwall thinks that we're going to have enough, so it will power again the house as opposed to using off-peak electricity. Very overcast again, but we got enough for what we need and a bit of surplus as well, so 32.55 kilowatt hours, so we should be good into the next day. Then 23rd, similar story, not great performance, but enough to keep us going at just over 20 kilowatt hours. And we go through to the 24th. And again, similar story, don't need to pull from the grid. Powerwall's doing everything we need. We've got enough to fill the Powerwall and power the house during the day. Just over 30 kilowatt hours. 25th, again, still not pulling from the grid again. A little bit less performance and very marginal exporting there of 1 kilowatt, but 21.54 kilowatt hours. Again, we should be okay into the next day. Now, we've got car charging going on. We've got some hot water stuff going on. And then the house just pulling itself from the grid whilst it tries to work out what to do. So we've got 44.46 kilowatt hours imported from the grid in this period of time, again, to charge up the cars and do other stuff. But the rest of the day isn't too bad, so we can meet all our kind of needs from solar, and the Powerwall will have been charged from that as well. So we should be okay into the next morning, assuming you didn't need to do extra charging of the cars. I think I mentioned already that I decided to sell my Tesla Model S, so I would have been charging this up as well a little bit. So if people come to look at it, I've got enough extra power in the batteries if I need to take it up for little test drives and stuff. On to the 27th, so more car charging as well as hot water heating as well. So there hadn't been enough surplus to charge cars and heat hot water, so kind of doing some of that from the grid, which is why you're seeing this bigger spikes here. And again, the forecast was not looking good for this day, if I remember correctly, and it wasn't, so only 10 kilowatt hours. So again, we're going to definitely have some grid pull in the morning because we won't have had ability to charge the Powerwall and heat hot water for showers and baths and whatnot. So on to the 28th. Okay, that's interesting, not what I expected. So still running from the Powerwall apart from that little blip right when the off-peak started. But again, not great performance during the day, so we would be able to power ourselves, but not really put much into the Powerwall. So it'll be interesting to see what we have in the morning. Yeah, so there is some Powerwall stuff going on, probably hot water as well. Looking at that, so 4 plus 3. Yeah, I would say that's Powerwall charging and hot water heating. But the rest of the day is pretty good. Not a bad kind of curve. It looks small, obviously, because we had a peak grid pull of like 12 kilowatts, but that's actually not bad, and it's kind of getting up towards clipping towards 6 kilowatts, so that's pretty good. And then we go through to the 30th, and again we finish the month off with not a bad day. Again, not much pulling from the grid there. Good curve up until 10:15, but it's a little bit overcast, but still solid performance, 38.64 kilowatt hours. And then finally on the 31st, not pulling from the grid, reasonable performance, 27.17 kilowatt hours, and we kind of end the month on a pretty decent note. One other thing I did want to mention, because a friend of mine has noticed this a couple of times, is I check this every month anyway as part of these videos, but I never normally communicate it on the channel, but I thought I would because it's clear that people probably don't check this very often, and this is where you want to be checking to make sure that, especially if you have a solar edge system, one of your optimizers or your panels hasn't failed. So if you go into the layout view, you can see how your panels, and as a result of that, the optimizers are performing. And if one of these is black or performing significantly less, then you're going to know you have a problem with one of those panels. That's one of the advantages of having a solar edge system. It's much easier to pinpoint when you have a panel or optimizer failure option. So hopefully your installer or solar edge would contact you if this happens, but rather than relying on other people, make sure you check yourself maybe every couple of weeks or at least once a month to make sure your solar system is performing as well as it should do. Otherwise you're going to be obviously impacting your performance capabilities. Okay, so that kind of goes through how the solar performed. As usual, just finish off with kind of how some of that energy went into hot water, car charging, and filling the Powerwall. So start off with the Zappi. So if you look at Zappi performance, it's saying that I pulled 128.5 kilowatt hours, which equated to 63% of my charging from the grid, and a total of that is 77.07 kilowatt hours from solar, so around 37%. still can't decide whether this is 100% accurate, because it's still plays silly buggers sometimes, in my opinion. I feel like that might be accurate actually, because again, as you saw in the day by day, there were situations where he did pull from the grid, so it does kind of make sense. If we look at the eddy in terms of heating hot water, so this month we had 94 kilowatt hours of solar surplus went into heating hot water, which is pretty good. So I'm happy with that. And then finally, from the Powerwall, we're able to get 300 kilowatt hours of energy out of the Powerwall. Again, some of that would have come from the grid, some of it would come from surplus, but obviously stops us having to pay peak electricity prices of 15 pence a kilowatt. It's either coming from solar, or we're kind of filling that up with 5 pence per kilowatt, which makes things a third or 2/3 cheaper, even, because it's only a third of the price. But yeah, that's it. Hope it helps. Again, as usual in the comments, ask any questions you have. Try and do my best to answer them. Try and be a little bit faster getting September stats out, even though it won't be complete because the panels are off now towards the end of the month. Let me know how your system's performed in August, if you're still familiar with what it is, seeing I'm nearly a month late. And yeah, catch you next time. Thanks for watching this video. A thumbs up would be really appreciated. If you're interested in other geek type videos, please consider subscribing to Spectrum Geeks. Why not also follow us on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter. And before you leave, why don't you check out one of these other videos that may be of interest. Thanks again for watching.